Yeah, I'm holding it. The packet. I just that's not really. There'll be some questions.
Okay, will you make sure I'm in there once in a while?
Do you want?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's mostly audio, so you're gonna get your voice.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Just talk about it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I know. I have to.
Friend.
I know. I have to remind you. I know that.
are they not gonna turn that on? Is you're not gonna run that? We're not gonna run that? We're not gonna run that?
Make sure Larry's ready and I'll be right back.
Yeah.
No. We're gonna let them take you from here from 6:30 to 7 was when we were running those.
Oh,
Yep. So I just had about 5 or 6 of them. Yep. Just let them have a little bit as a walking in. Yep. If we have time.
yeah. He's getting a very good education. Everybody has that chance.
You know, as an old 4-H leader and a judge of all states, stronger. Exactly.
Patrick, just to remind you, you're sitting right next to the live mic. Evidently, your voice is carrying. I don't know.
Just like, what are you saying, Sherry?
No, I'm not. Good evening, everyone. If you'd like to find a seat, we get started. So glad you could all take time to join us for this information meeting. I'm Shirley Bowen. I'm the Public Information Officer here for Mills County. We are going to turn this meeting over to the experts, and we have a large number of them here in the audience today. We're starting with Dennis Harper, and we are going to let Dennis take it from here.
My mic turns on, okay.
Just one quick thing I forgot to say. If you could all just take a second and turn off your cell phones, turn the sound down, that'd be great. And also, we're going to be doing questions by cards today. I know the last time at the meeting we had here, everyone had your arms in the air for a really long time. So we handed out cards. If you need cards, let us know. We'll pick those up after the speakers are done, and we will have an extensive question time for you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Ooh, I'm getting some feedback. Try this again. How's that? Clear in the back. Are you able to hear me? Okay, thank you. My name is Dennis Harper. I am the Recovery Division Administrator for Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management. And perhaps on our staff, I have the only face made for radio, but nonetheless, I was voluntold or volunteered after our meeting today to go ahead and do the hosting and facilitation, so I agreed to do that. And it is a pleasure to be here. Earlier tonight, we met with county officials and city officials to kind of talk about how the recovery is going so far and some of the needs that are out there that they're seeing, their constituency. And of course, we've been working in the area for quite some time. But before I move on too much, we've got some folks here that truly are subject matter experts as well. From FEMA, we have the Federal Coordinating Officer, Tim Strand, and my boss, Joyce Flynn, who's the Director of Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management. And I asked them earlier if they'd say a few words in order to kick this off. So, let me turn that off.
Thanks, Dennis. Good evening, everyone. As Dennis said, my name is Joyce Flynn. I'm the Director of Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So we're located in Des Moines, working with you through these efforts. You guys are doing all the hard work, and we're just here to support you however we can. We hope we get all your questions answered tonight, and if not, don't hesitate to keep handing in those cards till we make sure we get your questions answered. So thank you for being here. Tim.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tim Stratton. I'm the Federal Coordinating Officer. I'm the one that the agency and the White House sent out here to manage all the response and recovery operations for the state of Iowa. So I've been working hand in hand with Joyce and Dennis and counties and state personnel and all the other federal agencies, USACE and HUD and Army Corps of Engineers and on and on to help manage this overall disaster. I would like to point out our two individual assistance people, if they could raise their hands. We have two female people here that if you have any questions about your profile that you registered for FEMA, your individual assistance program, if you have any questions, you want to update your case file or have any of your questions answered, please feel free to see them. That's why they're here tonight. And this truly is a meeting for you. So I'm not going to talk anymore and turn back, and we're here to help any way we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So I guess then last but not least, Larry Hurst, thank you for helping to facilitate this and get it organized today. So hopefully we can provide the assistance and answer some questions. So a couple things we wanted to organize this by, just so you're aware. So there are basically two kinds of programs that are out there that in recovery. One of those types of programs is a program that's delivered directly to individuals, business owners, homeowners, expected renters, that kind of thing, where the homeowner makes or the business owner makes direct application. And then there are other programs that are delivered through communities and counties. So we're going to start, I think, with those that directly are delivered to individuals, because I think in this crowd, perhaps most of the questions may focus in those areas. And then later on, we'll move on to other public programs that could impact homeowners or business owners. Later on, we'll talk about those as well. I think we've got the subject matter experts in the audience to answer a lot of questions, but somehow if we don't tonight, and if there's a question that we can't answer, we'll make it our objective to go back and figure out what the answer is. So that's our objective for the evening. Thank you for the idea of the cards. I think that is going to work very well. And so what we'll do is we'll make sure the question is heard later on when we do get to the question and answer. And I think my job is to make sure I'm pointing at the right person to answer the question. I think I know enough to do that much anyway. So with that in mind, I think we'll start with individual assistance. I don't know, Corey Fast from FEMA is ready to jump in.
Thank you.
There, Corey. Corey Fast, individual assistant. I know I spoke here a few weeks back, so some of you guys may recognize me and our staff owner from the DRC. I'm sure you've seen them before. So just give you a quick overview of FEMA's individual assistance program. What we provide is assistance to individuals through your rental assistance is one of the big things we do have. Some of you guys now 6 days post events, and what you have is continued temporary housing assistance. FEMA can provide continued rental assistance for up to 18 months from date of declaration. An easy way to explain that is if you were paying $500 a month for rent before, and now the rent is $1,000 a month, FEMA can help offset that cost for up to 18 months so you can find a more affordable solution to get you back into what you were before. For renters, we also cover your personal property damages, and then owners, including the personal property, we also cover some real property damage to your structure, etc. So most of you guys have had an inspection. I know there are some areas that are still inaccessible, and some of you guys may have heard from, we had some team members out this week. We're trying to come up with some creative solutions for you. We're still working on that concurrence package from headquarters to do that, different means of inspection. If you are one of those individuals, once your home does become fully accessible, please call us, let us know you can request that complete inspection. They will come back and do that. The process we're trying to work is you will get a phone call from an inspector. They're going to do it based upon the pictures we took from the exterior. They're going to ask you questions about your property, how many people live there, etc., to try and get the best estimate we can since we can't get to your property and give you some form of assistance rolling out. One of the other things, SBA, they're a huge partner of ours. I know when a lot of people may not want a loan, but that is part of the process with FEMA. If you receive that loan, you do have to complete the application. You may not be approved. There's a whole process towards that. You may accept part of the loan, you may accept none of it, but that is part of the process that we got to work through. So I encourage you, if you did get that application, you need to complete that. You can go visit the DRC, they're there to help you work through that process. And then one of the other things that we're working on is, I'm sure on everybody's mind, is the direct housing or the mobile home mission. And we're currently working on that. We've had a lot of people out in the field doing assessments for commercial parks all across the counties to try and identify those, as well as you've heard some phone calls from our staff to try and identify, do you need that solution or not? So more to come on that. It's really in the early stages of that. We're working on some pads and as we move through that program and get you licensed into a facility that will meet your temporary need. Kind of just a quick overview, if there's any, one thing I did miss, is the appeal process. You know, if you're not happy with the first assessment that was done by FEMA, you can always appeal that decision. One of the main things you need to do is get some contractor estimates for your repairs, provide them, and call FEMA and request a second inspection. A good example of that is your air conditioner or your furnace. When FEMA inspects it, we don't know if it was fully destroyed, so they're going to give you what is called a clean and repair award. You're going to have someone come out and you can have them inspect it. If they say it does need to be replaced, you can provide those estimates to FEMA. We'll call and you can get additional assistance for that because of that, you know, the contractor estimate showing what it was destroyed. I think we're going to save questions to the end. Kind of will.
Do you mind if Tim? Thank you.
So just real quickly, I want to just add a couple of points to that. How this process worked, the governor, the storm happened, the governor asked the president for help, and the president said, okay, and he sent us out here to do just that, and that's to help you. And so that's what our intent is. So when we're talking about a denial letter that you may have gotten in your individual assistance application, if it got denied, appeal it. It's okay. Don't be nice. Don't take no for an answer, but appeal it. Oftentimes, it's just a lack of information or a document that's missing. Same thing happens, I want to say the same thing about your inspection of your home. If they come out and they inspect it and they say it's X dollars worth of damage, and that's just a fraction of what we really experience, then call for another inspection and appeal that process. Don't take no for an answer. Don't be shy. And the last thing I wanted to say too is about our direct housing program is we have mobile home units in the state down at Camp Dodge. They're ready to be placed. We've already identified over 150 sites that we can mobilize these mobile home units and get them set up for you. And what we're finding is people are saying, well, thanks, I'm staying with a relative or what have you. And that's okay, that's your choice. But staying with a relative might get, you might work out your welcome after the course of time. And we have these and they're for you, and that's my point. Don't be shy, let us help you. So I just want to end with that and say thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Tim. And I think I've learned from Kim and Corey, our individual assistance speaker earlier on, that persistence is a good thing. If you make an application under the individual assistance program, if you don't believe you got what was fair, you should go back to the individual assistance program and say that and stay with it. It's part of the process. It's not a bad thing in terms of an individual pursuing other options with FEMA. The other thing I would say would be throughout the process, including with direct housing, the trailers that Tim talked about, there are a lot of different options that states and FEMA can pursue in order to help people after a disaster. The philosophy we've had is that if we think we can help people, it doesn't matter how few people we can help. Let's pursue that option and figure out if we can implement it. So, in that regard, not every aspect of FEMA's programs are large. Obviously, we're not going to bring in a couple thousand trailer homes, right? But if we can help 50 to 100 or so folks with that option, that's something we wanted to pursue. So, I think lastly, there's been a rumor that goes around that so there's a whole bunch of old, dirty trailers that FEMA's dragging up from Texas or North Carolina or whatever to put in these spots. That is not the case. I actually saw pictures. They're brand spanking new as they arrive, and so they should be adequate to house people safely and securely. So with that in mind, I think we've covered that part of the individual assistance program. I know we have SBA here. I don't know if you wanted to say something. Okay, wait for the question and answer. Steve with HUD, if you could raise your hand. There you go. So Steve with HUD is here to talk about a question related to water assistance, if we need to on the Q&A. And we also have some of the public program folks here, subject matter experts. So if you hear the conversation about things like buyouts, property acquisition, demolition, that type of thing, cities and counties do commonly after a disaster, that we have the program people here to be able to answer those questions as well. If you have questions that you think may impact you individually. The one thing we did, the reason we had a meeting with the counties and cities beforehand, is that we understand, and so do the cities and counties that are here, that decisions in regard to potential future acquisitions or demolitions are things that FEMA requires them to do, or that the state forces cities and counties to do. So we're a partner in that action to help them through that process. And as they go through that process, what we commonly do is usually the cities and counties ask for this. They're going to sit down with their constituency and talk about, say, a future acquisition or future demolition. We help with that process. So we make sure that things are understood correctly. It is very confusing at times, we realize that. So as things come out in the public and you hear about all these different options, people begin to get confused. And really the issue becomes, how does it apply to you, not how does it apply to everyone else. So it's a process we go through to try to get the information out so that you know for your situation how these programs kind of come together for you. It'll take some time, we realize that, but eventually it'll all come together with the assistance of good city council and board of supervisors. So that, Chief of Staff said I can't use any acronyms other than FEMA, so I'm trying not to do that. But if I do, you can always raise your hand and say you used an acronym I don't understand. Or if one of the other people, and this is a challenge to our subject matter experts that are out here, if they're answering questions and they start to use acronyms that you don't understand, I'll try to tackle them, or you can help raise your hand and say, I don't understand what you're saying, you're talking in acronyms. So that's one of our other kind of rules for the Q&A as we go. So with that, can we move to the Q&A at this point, I believe? Do we have cards back?
We'll go good.
Sure.
Did you want to have any kind of a presentation on the buyout piece? No?
That's a good question.
What, Dusty?
Sure. So, what else, Steve?
We'll save you some questions if you start.
So one of our funding partners, always in disasters, I've gotten to know Steve well over the years. He doesn't answer my phone calls anymore, but he has been a great partner in Iowa in terms of helping us through disasters. And there are programs that Steve's familiar with that he can brief. I know that one of the common questions you're probably going to get is, when is the special disaster appropriation going to happen? So, go ahead.
Disaster appropriations are a function of the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. HUD simply is the recipient of that money. The money goes from HUD through the state to the local communities. I'm not dodging the question. I just don't have the power to write the check. And so if there's communication that you can make without me politicizing this to move that process along, that's your business, not mine. At the point I did talk to the mayor of Pacific Junction, something I want to think of, this is not about tonight, but a week from now, and you don't want to hear from a week from now, long-term recovery planning. That's where that money is going to be really important. We'll talk about that later after we get through tonight.
SBA. You're up here, you need stuff.
My name is Corey Williams. I know you've probably seen my face a number of times. Public Information Officer with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance. We offer low-interest disaster assistance loans not only to businesses of all sizes, but homeowners, renters, and nonprofits. For businesses can borrow up to $2 million to repair or replace disaster-damaged real estate, which would include any kind of real estate, machinery, equipment, inventory. But the most important aspect for a Mills County business owner is working capital, to make sure that you can sustain yourself during this recovery period. Some recovery periods may be up to 3 months, sometimes up to 6 months, maybe even longer. So it's important for a business owner to have working capital to sustain themselves, to cover any kind of lost rents, any kind of marketing expenses, or any kind of just lost revenue that's due to disaster. So that's why it's important to make sure to have working capital to sustain that business throughout this recovery period. Now, the interest rates for the business loans is as low as 4%. It's no cost to apply, no closing costs, and all of our loans carry a minimum 5-month deferment. Now, for the homeowners can borrow up to $200,000 to repair or replace disaster-damaged real estate, and up to $40,000 to repair or replace disaster-damaged personal property, which would include any vehicles that were damaged as a result of the devastating floods. Now, the interest rates for the home loan is as low as 2.063%. Again, no cost to apply, no closing costs, and it's a minimum 5-month deferment. Also, renters can borrow up to $40,000 to repair or replace disaster-damaged personal property, which would also include any vehicles that were damaged as well. And then nonprofits can borrow up to $2 million to repair or replace any real estate or any kind of machinery and equipment of the nonprofit. And nonprofits are also eligible for working capital as well. And those interest rates are as low as 2.75%.
The people in the back can't hear very well, so you guys are gonna have to figure out.
Does anybody have an FHA loan in here, a mortgage on their house with FHA? All right. If you have an FHA loan from the date of the disaster declaration, you have a 90-day moratorium on any foreclosures. That means you have 90 days to work with your bank to figure out what's going to happen in terms of your house, etc. The key is you have to communicate with your lender and you have to continue to make your mortgage payment. But you have 90 days. If you have any issues, I have cards. You can call me and I'll help you with that.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So before I go to the Q&A cards, the last thing I'm going to cover, and I'll do this myself, is if you give me a show of hands, how many folks are interested in some type of acquisition program that are in here? Okay. So I'm going to try to, up front, provide some information on those programs. Hopefully it's useful later on. And then I will talk about them in context with also potential demolition, and I'll try to be clear about how the programs work. What you're talking about in those cases are programs that are delivered through cities and counties. So cities and counties make application. There are generally two types of acquisitions that can occur after a disaster. One of them is related to HUD special flood appropriations. And HUD can acquire properties and then allow for future redevelopment of those properties. So right now, the issue is that there is no HUD program turned on in Iowa because that requires special appropriations, although we hear that's in the works. So looking outwardly, where we have communities that are looking at that alternative, they would in the future be looking at funding under HUD, Community Development Block Grant, to do that kind of work. In those cases, we can have properties that are, or HUD can, properties that are demolished by FEMA because of health and safety, and then later on FEMA can come through and acquire the property and they can be redeveloped, okay? That's generally how the HUD programs work. We've seen them used in combination in cities, so you've seen HUD and FEMA both do acquisition projects even within the same city based on the application that the city provides to those agencies. So the main point in this is that an individual can't make an application to FEMA or HUD to be bought out. If homeowners are interested in pursuing programs like that, they need to let their city and county folks know if that's the case. And then we start to work with those cities and counties to put those applications together. Okay, so if I move on from HUD, then FEMA. FEMA acquisition is probably the most commonly referred to of the acquisitions that are out there, FEMA being the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Our office administers those funds, and so we work with cities and counties in that program. And the first question always is, do you, city, county, have an interest in pursuing an acquisition program? And then if they do, then secondly, what area or what properties are we talking about? And the program is voluntary to the city and county, but it's also voluntary to any of the property owners. It has to be voluntary. It can't be coerced in any way. It can't be condemned in order to acquire the property. It has to be voluntary. So those programs are always voluntary. Generally, the way the program works is if the cities and counties pursue it and the grant's turned on, it's pre-flood fair market value for the property. And generally the grant pays for all the, like closing costs, some of these title certs, that kind of thing. And then the cities generally also will, in those cases, demolish the property. And what's unique about FEMA's program is that in the end, the program has to be permanently deed restricted and permanently owned by the public, in other words, the city or county. So a lot of that has occurred in Iowa over the past 25 or 30 years. So there are two types of programs. One is FEMA's program, which we'll start to work with cities and counties on. We already have started to have those discussions. And then I'm making you aware that there is a HUD program that is a little bit different than FEMA's program. Although it exists, it's not available right now. We expect it probably will be in the future. So with those two things in mind, then to move on to the demolition of property, and this is a case where, again, it has to be the legal responsibility and authority of a city or county in order to inspect and determine that it is a public health and safety risk. And then they implement their local ordinances in order to demolish the structures. Usually that means they hire a contractor in order to go in and do some of the initial inspections, but also then eventually the demolition of the property. Just because a property is demolished doesn't mean that it's deed restricted, and it doesn't mean that it can't be redeveloped in the future. Only the FEMA program acquiring the property can dictate that the property is deed restricted. So demolition really has nothing directly to do with whether property can be developed in the future or not. So I know that's really confusing, and what we try to do, the best way to do this, quite honestly, is when we start to work with cities and counties on putting together that application, one of the steps in the process then is to bring the folks in from that city or that county and actually sit down and talk about your specific situation in that city or county's application, so you understand how those things are going to apply to you individually. It takes some time to do that. However, we've already started the process. So with that in mind, I want to give a quick brief on buyouts, kind of how they work. Our objective is always to, as much as possible, put together a package with a city or county so that there aren't any required local funds in order to be able to execute the project. We aren't always able to do that. But generally, there's a 15% match requirement of local governments in order to participate in those programs. And I think over the years, almost all plans have been able to figure out a way to handle that 15% in partnership with the city or county. So with that in mind, hopefully I get some card questions that kind of go along those lines.
These are about trailers.
Corey. I'll let you read the question and then give me the answer. I'll step away.
Okay.
So the first,
Takes a little while.
So the first question is, how do we apply for direct housing unit? No one has reached out to us yet. So you don't actually apply for a mobile home unit. That's all based upon the inspection that was performed. It puts it into the system category of FEMA. Once you're in that category, you would get an automated phone call from our system, and we would have those further on discussions about your housing plan, how long you are, where you're staying, how long you can currently stay there, and what your needs are for your potential. So it kind of goes back to that appeal inspect as your first determination you're not happy with. You can always appeal it, and that may throw you up into that category that would make you potentially open for direct housing units.
So Corey, is it true that anyone that's eligible for direct housing, then FEMA would be directly calling those individuals to verify their interest and eligibility?
Yeah, yes, sir. I think we had about 400 people in Fremont Mills that were initially eligible, and that's down to about roughly 30 to 40 that actually, after our call, have said they had one-on-one. Most people traditionally find their own resource, or they choose to stay with friends and family. Not everybody really wants to live in a mobile home. That's just a choice. We traditionally see about 10% that do take use that option in all of our disasters.
Their conditions change though.
Yeah, and like Tim said earlier, if your conditions do change, your housing plan, if you're no longer able to stay with your friends or family, please call and keep us updated. Because that's one thing, if you receive that automated call and they ask questions about that and your housing situation has changed, call back and let us know. Call that line back.
So the next question probably right along with that. The question is, how long can we stay in the FEMA trailers?
So the direct housing program is for up to 18 months from the date of declaration. Now, you do have to work with FEMA and have to be working on a permanent housing plan. FEMA will come out and meet with you monthly to ensure you're working towards an attainable plan, whether that's repairing your home, buying a new home, or finding a rental. It's not just a guarantee that you can stay there. We're already 2 months post-incident, so now it's down to 16 months. We work with you hand in hand. That's where case management comes into play. It's a whole community effort to try and help you meet your housing situation.
So Corey, what's going to happen after 18 months if folks are still, they still don't know what their long-term housing solution is?
So if that's a direct question, if you're in a unit, what the state can request is a sales and donations program of MHUs. Once they do request that, we can start working with the owners. You have the option to buy the unit from FEMA, and then we just turn it over to you where you are. If it's in a commercial park, you would just assume that pad lease and everything like that. So we work through you with that process as part of that whole recertification monthly and work on your housing plan.
So Corey, how do you determine what size the trailer is going to be?
That's based upon your household composition. So when you register with FEMA, the number of individuals in your house. We also look at the access and functional needs of your household. I think there's about 3 right now we're working with. We want to make sure the unit meets your needs. If it's a wheelchair, so if you need a ramp, or if you need, for a wheelchair, you need what's a UFAS unit, Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards. So we make sure our units meet those requirements, and we match the unit appropriately. Or if you just need, have a little trouble with stairs, we can put a ramp to the unit, something like that. We work with you to make sure we meet your needs.
So the question is, where will the mobile home units from FEMA be located specifically? Only in the Pacific Junction, Glenwood area, or closer to Omaha Council Bluffs?
So FEMA has looked all up and down I-29 to look at the commercial park availability. Right now, we've identified there's a park here in Glenwood, as well as some in Council Bluffs. We've identified up to 156 mats for units to be placed on. So we started with call outs. I think we have 7 or 8 units here in town. We've identified people to accept all of those. Now we're working on people that may want to go to Council Bluffs. I know there's a discussion point about placing them down in Pacific Junction, but based upon FEMA has to look at the floodplain. We can't actually put a unit out there where it could be damaged again. So.
So I think that goes along with the question of, can it be placed on private property?
So the answer is, or the question is, can it be placed on private property? The answer is, yes, it could, if it was in a safe and secure area. The problem is that since the levees broke, now we have the flooding that took place, we have to conform to the federal standards of the National Flood Program. So then, essentially, most of the private sites or the residences that are currently flooded, we can't put it back on that because it's already been flooded. So I can't justify putting it back into an unsafe situation. But if you had a home that was not flooded, but probably wouldn't be eligible for the direct housing if that was the case. So it's kind of one of those situations where we have to put it where we can to have utilities already there and it's accessible to you. So, say again? I've been working with the Army Corps. I don't expect those levees to be fixed until temporary, till probably mid-2020, from what I understand. No, not temporary.
So, let me move on with questions. The last question was, can FEMA trailer be set up on my property in PJ? That's the question. I think Tim answered that question.
No, the temporary fixes they're working on right now. Those I expect to be done probably like next month. We're talking about some of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I misled you there. I heard a lot of comments. So I'm sorry. No, that would be the permit.
So probably let me move on with the card questions, because if you allow us to, and we'll try to open it up for, there's quite a few of these, by the way. So generally, if we receive a FEMA trailer, can it be placed on our property while we rebuild rather than in the trailer park?
And I think we've addressed that a little bit. Like Tim said, if you do have an area of property, if you live in Pacific Junction, but you own land outside of, say, in Glenwood or something somewhere that didn't flood, you can let us know that you do have that other option of land to place that unit on. We can come do a site assessment of that.
Okay, I think you're off for now, for at least for a while. Okay, let's take them on. Okay. That's right. Probably, I think this question is, what is an acquisition program? The questions are time frame, who makes the decision, who determines the amount of the dollars. So, Amy, did you want to jump in here? Amy's she'll be representing the FEMA program side of the issue, so Amy administers our state, she's our state hazard mitigation officer.
Sorry. Yeah, just want to make sure. Just to introduce myself quick, I'm Amy Bartlett. I work with Iowa Homeland Security under Dennis. So we're the state agency that receives the money that becomes available once the disaster is declared. So we are the agency that's working directly with your city council or board of supervisors to work through these applications. The money that's available for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is the funding source for these projects, is based upon the public assistance grant allocation. So whereas public assistance is to rebuild and restore what was previously there to public infrastructure, as those damages and costs increase, more money becomes available under Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. Currently, the estimate that we're approved for to fund the projects is a little over $20 million for hazard mitigation grants. Those grants include property acquisitions, a number of other activities that the state deems allowable for mitigation. What we try to do disaster situations is to prioritize as much as that money to the impacted area and those communities to help them recover from that event before we open it up to applicants in the rest of the state. The initial application period for those projects is 12 months. So we're looking at March of 2020. We do have options to extend that application period, but we will make every effort to get the project submitted to FEMA, because the sooner I can get it to FEMA, the sooner I can get the money to the local officials, and the sooner you can move on with your recovery process. Each application will be divided by the property, so you could have an application with one property, you could have an application with 100. It's all up to that community and those individuals that volunteer for the program. The funding mechanism is the same as other grants. We have a number of things we have to do to get that application in. We'll work with your officials to do it. And then we'll start the process of the actual demolition and acquisition of the property. So the time frame, after the application period of 12 months, I would expect funding to be readily available. You know, we have funding now. I could approve a project if we had it available tomorrow to get that money out the door. Typically, depending on the size of the project, it may take a little bit longer, but we'll work with your local officials on that. The decision on who gets, I'm assuming it's a decision on who gets a buyout. The resident has to volunteer for the program. Keep in mind, the acquisition and buyout process, we demolish and acquire the property. You get a fair market value for your home of pre-disaster calculation, and then the community or the county gets the deed property. You cannot rebuild on that property, but you can take the money from your home and move elsewhere in the community or elsewhere in the county. That's not deed restricted. If that's your recovery plan. Yeah.
Is the 20 million for all of Iowa, or?
The 20 million is available to all jurisdictions and all cities and counties across the state. But because of the area of impact related to this particular disaster, we will be prioritizing funds for the severity, especially along the Missouri. Just knowing the need of the housing issues, the potential property acquisitions. So, I mean, 20 million in the grant, it's a lot of money for mitigation. We haven't, typically we get maybe 3 million a year for hazard mitigation. So we can do a lot with $20 million. Determination of the dollar, I don't know if that means a home or the grant itself, but if the community stands up and says, I have these 50 volunteers for property acquisitions, we'll come up with that cost estimate for both the home and everything that goes in with demolition and acquisition. We'll come up with that dollar amount and all the required paperwork and submit it to FEMA to move forward.
Okay, I'm gonna keep your still in the hot seat, Amy. So, if I have a buyout program and the city of, whatever purchases my property, what's my responsibility as a homeowner for the property after it's acquired?
After the acquisition, the responsibility for the property, the land itself, the deed is turned over and owned by the community and the county. So it is their responsibility to maintain that parcel however they see fit.
So a question about buyout procedures. Can it apply to rental property owners?
It can apply to rental as well. Similar type of process. The owner of the structure, but in the funding is a little bit different with renters, but they can be included on the city's application as well to get that calculation for the property owner and the renter.
Okay, so you're still not seat. Is there a difference in the requirements for a buyout in rural areas as opposed to within cities?
No, the application process, whether it's a county unincorporated or a city incorporated property, is the same. The documentation is the same. The request that goes to FEMA looks very much the same. It just depends on the support documentation that goes with that.
Is there a 15% match for rural buyouts?
All hazard mitigation grant program projects are 75% funded by the federal, they are 10% funded by the state, and there is a 15% local match, whether that is to a city or a county entity.
Yeah, so this is a really good one. Somebody's well educated, so this may stump you. So here we go. You ready? FEMA states that if buyout happens, a tenant is displaced. So you're buying a rental property, when the tenant is displaced, funds may be available for the tenant to relocate or buy a house.
URA.
Sorry.
I'm gonna let Dusty answer this since he's the one that develops the application. So he's done applications that include rental properties, so he can give you some more specifics on that.
Short answer to the question is yes. Tenants displaced by a buyout, tenants that are involuntarily displaced by a buyout would be eligible, could be eligible for assistance to relocate to another rental unit. So that's going to be calculated on a case-by-case basis using a worksheet that we as the state have developed and assist the local jurisdiction in completing based on several factors that would contribute to the need for an increase in costs, in housing costs versus the unit that you were displaced from.
Is there a maximum for that assistance?
Yes, 7,200, I believe. And then there's also a move-in cost that would compensate for the number of rooms generally that are moved from location one to the replacement unit. So the $7,200 is reserved for differential in cost between your rental unit in the floodplain and a similar unit outside of the floodplain. The additional moving expense will vary depending on the number of rooms that need to be moved from unit, displacement unit to replacement unit.
Thank you. So you guys are still in the hot seat. Will FEMA help with rental property demolition if it's acquired under one of the buyout programs?
Yes. Yeah, they will, the properties, assuming that the owner of the property voluntarily participates and the community elects to buy out that property, the demolition would be addressed just the same. And I guess it was the question was it about buyout?
Property demolition for rental property.
Okay, so the question may just be about demolition and non-buyout. If that's the case, yes, those properties, those structures that the local jurisdiction deems in need of demolition could qualify just the same as an owner-occupied unit.
Okay. And we kind of hit on this, but it's probably good to hit it again. So how do you determine the value of the home on a FEMA buyout? Probably a brief look at market value.
FEMA buyout, that has to be based on a USPAP appraisal, which is a Uniform Standards of Appraisal Practices appraisal. So that's the standard for the entire country for any type of property appraisal. Yeah, sorry about that. It's based on a USPAP, which is a Uniform Standards of Appraisal Practices appraisal. So that would be for the market value of your home, and that can be for the pre-flood market value for those that qualify. Those that would qualify for pre-flood market value, I think that touched on this earlier, are U.S. national citizens that owned the property prior to the flood event.
Okay, so I think I can answer this one, but you're still on the hot seat. So, what options do we have if the city or county refuses to apply for FEMA buyouts? So what I can say right now is that from the discussion we had with the cities and counties earlier, there is an interest in property acquisitions, whether it's HUD buyouts or FEMA buyouts is really the issue, and whether it's redevelopment or not, I think is the issue. So those are issues that the cities and counties make decisions on. I'll just be honest, in 25 years of doing this kind of business with communities, we have seen cases before, I'm just going to be honest, where a number of property owners wanted to participate in a FEMA acquisition program, and the city didn't make application because they felt like it wasn't in their best development interest over the long term. So that has happened, and when it happens, there's nothing the state or FEMA can do in order to solve that issue. So.
How do you feel about that?
Hopefully it doesn't come to that. I mean, so, yeah. Okay, so if a city doesn't have the funds to pay the 15% match with buyouts, can the homeowner basically provide that match?
We do have instances where the entity that's making the application requests that a portion of the funds made available to the resident be used to offset the city's match, whether it's the full 15%, that's a negotiation between the applicant, the city officials and county officials and the resident, but that is an option for communities to do. I think we recently saw it in Cedar County with a few properties that they had acquired within the county. They used, I think it was 10% of the cost for the buyout to use to offset the local match for the county. So that is an option.
So I think the question on this next card has to do with the difficulty in communities pursuing applications because there's a 15% match requirement. So, and our answer to that question is, if we have communities that are interested in pursuing those applications, then we work with them to try and resolve that 15% match. I mean, we've had to always do that in Iowa in order to do these programs. So the majority of the programs we administered over the years, we've been able to figure that issue out, basically. Either we can get other funds available to offset the local match, which there will be options like that available. So we'll be sitting down talking to communities about the match issues, and if they have a match liability, then we'll work with them on that. So it'd be very difficult, honestly, to execute buyout programs unless you can figure out how to come as close as you can to 100% funding. So, is there a chance of a buyout for Pacific Junction? Is the next question. And I can't read the future. I think from the discussion we had, I think there is a chance of a buyout in Pacific Junction. It may not be a FEMA buyout. May or may not be a FEMA buyout. So I know from the discussion, the topic is open for discussion, but it'll still be based on Pacific Junction making application. Oh, yeah. So is it the mayor or city council that makes the decision to make the application for a buyout? So how does the application process work?
The application, we asked for what we call authorized representatives, typically a mayor, a city clerk, a board of supervisors representative, to submit the request for an application. It's what we call a notice of interest. It's an estimate on the number of properties. It's an estimate made a dollar amount, but it's what initiates our application process. Once we receive that notice of interest, we will be in contact with that authorized representative to finalize those costs and build that project out for approval. For this disaster, we have received no notice of interest from the Missouri River counties at this point.
What is the time frame on that? Once you do receive that, is it 12 months, 18 months?
The time frame on reviewing a notice of interest? The option to submit a notice of interest is open to everybody in the state at all times, regardless of funding availability. When we do receive a notice of interest, there's some very basic questions that we ask initially just to start the process. But typically funds that, with a project that we know is gonna be funded out of hazard mitigation grant, which is this disaster funding, we'll pick those up fairly immediately and make contact in order to start that process. Because of depending on the amount of properties they're interested in, it can be quite lengthy. It does require environmental reviews, to some degree. So the process for notice of interest for us to review it, I would say no more than a week, to actually have a meeting with that community and start figuring out what exactly they're looking at doing. Now, from that initial contact with the authorized representative to an approved project, acquisitions, depending on, again, the number of properties, the different reviews we have to go through. It could be as quick as 4 or 5 months where we could get a project approval, or it could be a bit more extended of a time frame. But I would say within the 12-month period, I would expect to see a project at least submitted to FEMA. And then it's on FEMA's time frame for approval.
So I think generally, if I could help with that too, it answered your question. Typically, within 6 months of a disaster event happening, at least in Iowa, we work with communities where you give them time to kind of do some assessment, figure out what's going on. Within 6 months, you're probably going to see a notice of interest. That's pretty typical if they're interested in doing one of the programs. Sometimes we're able to respond to funding almost immediately, depending on funding. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but we work on all of them. And the other aspect of that is that when a community submits an application, a lot of times they're how do I say this? They're lacking information a lot of times. So, but luckily we've got subject matter experts like Dusty who go out to the community and say, okay, I see what you got going on here. Well, let's break this down by a cost estimate, and they know how to do that and help communities do that. So that's our objective, is to make it happen as quickly as possible. So,
Ultimately, whose decision is it to submit that application?
The question was ultimately whose decision is it to submit that application? It is that local authorized representative. So if it's the city mayor, the county board of supervisors, somebody along those lines.
no, like I said, we're still waiting for notices, but this is the time frame that typically cities and counties are going through that process. So they wouldn't be necessarily behind at this point. But, within the next 3 or 4 months, definitely we're going to know more about whether counties or cities are doing that work or not. So this is a pretty good question. Does it have to be a buyout for the county or the city? I think the answer to this question is, it depends on where your property is located. So if your property is located inside of the city has to be the applicant. I'm going to say there have been exceptions to that in the past, and then ignore that one because they're really strange stuff. But it does happen where counties acquire properties within cities, and not the best thing to do in the world. But for the most part, if you live out in the county and incorporated area, the county would need to make the application. They're the authorized applicant for properties within the county. Does that make sense? So there could be two. Yeah, actually, you could have. I mean, in theory, oftentimes we'll have a county will make application and multiple cities in the county as well. They're all separate applications, so, yeah. That's a good one for you, Amy. You're gonna have to, when will the application be ready? Where do we sign up? Who do we talk to?
I would sign up,
Good.
So we understand the situation, not only in this county, but in a number of counties along the Missouri. So we have already started our office's kind of initial reach out to representatives, putting the idea that this is an option if you choose to pursue it. We're really just waiting for them to kind of, assess the community as a whole, assess the county, assess their vision for the future, have those conversations with you as the homeowners, think about their long-term recovery in a holistic manner. I think once they have those conversations and have those meetings, they'll be able to decide what's best for the community and hopefully for the homeowners as well. That fits into your recovery plan as well. So again, it's up to the city to accept that voluntary notice from the resident that they're willing to pursue. There are options to, this is getting a little bit into the detail, but there are options to say if the city believes that there's going to be 50 property acquisitions, that we identify all 50 properties tomorrow. But maybe only 10 of those residents or homeowners are, decided 100% that they want to move forward, and the city agrees 100% to move those properties forward. We do have the option to fund the 10 properties as soon as possible, with the idea that the remaining 40 on that application may be activated at a later date. So there are options to provide kind of a mass application for all potential properties, and then fund them as everybody kind of comes to that agreement. The homeowners and the officials make agreement on the costs and the appraisals and things like that. So we do see that quite often as well.
So there's a number of the cards I'm looking at ask the question, how does the homeowner apply for acquisition? And I think consistently the answer is, you got to do that through the city or county. So yeah, express the interest in them, because they're the ones that are going to make application to the program. And for those that have asked questions about whether the cities or counties have started doing anything, Dusty and our staff, and I know Rick Biondi is also in the audience, have been working with these cities and counties for quite a while now, starting discussing the programs, that kind of thing, to make sure we're ready when decisions are made in order to execute. So basically the process has started. There may not be a yes or no answer decision at this point in terms of acquisitions, but the process has started. Cities have been aggressively pursuing that technical assistance from us. Good question here. If our home is not completely destroyed, can we still be eligible for buyout?
The option for buyout is a little bit different when it comes to the property acquisition side of it. There's not an official structural assessment with a home destroyed designation that's required for a property acquisition. We look at damage, we look at the incident, we look at maybe some repetitive damage that we've seen, where it's located in the floodplain. We have some other options to make the property viable on the application outside of an official designation of destroyed property.
So maybe a related question, but I think we can tackle this one. We are ready to rebuild, is the question. How long does the city county have to finally make decisions?
So I guess it's up to the city and the county as far as their codes and their inspections and how they choose to pursue that process. We are not going to dictate that you cannot repair your home. We are not going to dictate that you have to participate in a property acquisition or demolition. Ultimately, it's you as the homeowner who decides what's best for your recovery, what's best for your home, and what your options are. We are here to provide assistance if you choose to go down the path of property acquisition and demolition.
Do you have to be current on your mortgage payment to qualify for the buyout?
Not necessarily, no.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, sorry, yeah, the question was, you have to be current on your mortgage payment to qualify for buyout. The answer is no, as long as the buyout pays off the mortgage. So at the time of closing, the buyout has to be able to cover and result in a clear title. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so this is probably a two-part question. It does involve, answers you've given before, but how is fair market value determined? So you guys talked about that a little bit earlier. The follow-up to that is, what if it's too low?
The program, the buyout program requires that the local administrative plan includes a appeal. So if the fair market value established by the appraisal appears to be low or is low, per the property owner's opinion, if their opinion can be supported with a second appraisal at the cost of the homeowner, then that could be used by the city or county as the fair market value offer as opposed to the old appraisal. But that's not necessarily a guarantee. That problem has been heavily mitigated by the requirement of a USPAP appraisal as opposed to an adjustment factor to assess values. So we see many, fewer appeals than we used to because the appraised values are a much more accurate representation of the actual market value than some of the prior methods. But to answer the question, yeah, there's an appeal process in place that would require a review appraisal or a new appraisal of the property that would be then accepted or rejected by the applicant.
How do you go to that appraisal? You keep saying.
Yeah, a professional appraisal. The question is, how do you come to that appraised value? That's determined by a professional appraiser. The initial appraisal would be hired by the city or county. That appraiser spends a day or several hours at your property reviewing and comparing it to other similar properties in the area and comes up with the market value as compared to similar sales. Pre-flood value, as long as you own the property prior to the flood and are a U.S. national or citizen.
So the follow-up question to that might be, in every case, can they determine a pre-flood fair market value? And the answer to that question is yes, they can. They can make that determination. Even if the house isn't there, they're going to be able to determine pre-flood fair market value. So.
What about the tax value?
The appraisal and you're awarded, you're approved for the buyout, how long does it take for the homeowner to actually get their money? Because I've heard rumors that the Houston flood, homeowners are still waiting for their money from their buyout.
So we're better than Texas. You know, so it's hard to. So you got to have the money in order to give it, do a grant agreement, and give it away, right? So that's really what the challenge is right now, is going through the process of accessing the funds so we can support the project for the community. I think since I've been around, usually it's going to range from after 6 months to maybe out to 18 months. You're going to have a lot of the initial acquisitions take place under the program based on the applications you receive. Sometimes it's after that. It kind of depends on. Sometimes it's local decision-making process, sometimes it's a math issue, so there are things that build a little bit sometimes, so I would say, that general time frame, that's what we operate in.
So just to summarize, 6 to 18 months, so this isn't an immediate thing where anybody would get money right away. It's a very long process.
Yeah, in context of, my home is destroyed and I need a place to live, it's not an individual assistance program, so that's true. Wow. Does that mean it's over?
I just forgot to pay the light bill.
Thank you. I didn't do that. Okay, I got another really good question. I tell you what, you guys are really good. Honestly, these questions are outstanding. Let me try this one on you. House and land in different names. Is that a problem for a buyer? House and the land are in different names. Also, like a house on lease land, maybe?
Yeah, we've seen buyouts that are structures owned by one individual and land owned by another. Those are tricky case by case. If the structure owner and landowner both desire to participate and sell the property, then that's best case scenario. If that's not the case, if either or does not want to sell, it can complicate things, can make it impossible, it can make it so there's a negotiation process or a lease termination process. It's going to depend on what the lease, the agreement between the structure owner and the landowner says, and how that can be terminated, if it can be terminated. So there's a lot of variables. It's tough to say But I can say with certainty that would complicate the process, just simply that it adds one more party to the process. So yeah, it's something we've done before. It's something we've had too much difficulty with before because of a non-voluntary position for one or both parties.
So, I think Amy, you can take a shot at this one, maybe? An SPA, stay on standby. If there's a buyout and you've been approved and accepted for an SBA loan on that property, is the home landowner obligated to make the buyout funds available to SBA to pay on that loan?
I'll give this one a shot. This might be something that SBA can weigh on, but in my experience, the buyout program only has the requirement of clear title. Commonly, that means that the SBA loan and an existing SBA loan either need to be paid off, paid down, or transferred. But all that.
Yes, and that is correct. If somebody has an existing SBA loan and they are approved for the buyout program and they receive funds, those funds would have to be paid off towards the SBA loan. So that would be a requirement.
That was my question, you got clarified.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if we took the SBA loan for a different property altogether, and the property that the buyout's on, the mortgage is clear and paid off, and we used whatever funds to pay it, do we still then, and take the buyout, do we still then, we're still obligated for that buyout money to go to SBA?
So the question was, if you have an SBA loan on one property and you're seeking a buyout on a second non-associated property, but you happen to be the owner of both properties.
Well, we own property down home in PJ that was flooded for a buyout. We're qualified and took the SBA loan to buy a different house in a different county. We also paid off the existing mortgage on the flood home, so it is clear.
You paid off on the PJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the case where you're talking about more of a relocation situation, it sounds like, so with our program, we usually take both properties as collateral for relocation.
Because we didn't allow that.
Oh, okay, well, if we didn't take both properties as collateral, then the only property that we would actually have collateral on would be, so that would be the only property that would potentially have to be subject. If that property is not the PJ property, then it wouldn't have any ramifications there.
Okay, so in that case, we would not be obligated to use those funds to pay them.
It sounds like that would be the case, yeah.
This may be a little bit of a complex question. Does your tax valuation mean anything on a buyout?
It can and it can't. The most common practice that the state recommends and that has been followed since FEMA guidance has changed to require an appraisal is that each individual property is appraised. Technically, the program does allow for statistical sampling of the properties in the community and or buyout to be appraised, and that would help develop an adjustment factor to the assessed value that could be applied to establish fair market value. That gets problematic. It has been successful in other states, but we've had more success, in my opinion, appraising each individual property and not using the adjustment factor. So in Iowa, in the last 5 years, no, the assessed value has not been an impact on the market value, but it could, depending on the approach taken by any applicant.
And frankly, I think the pre-flood appraisal generally works out better for cities, counties, and the property owner than the alternate method of using tax valuation. So, sure, I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
You mentioned that they use both properties as a collateral. If you relocate to another property and you're in the home in PJ that's damaged, they're using both of those, your new property and your old property as collateral?
So in the case, in the example that they were talking about, the answer is no, they didn't in that particular case. Do that, so.
The SBA guy said that typically they do.
Yeah.
Use those funds as collateral.
So you got that question?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the case with the relocation, now this is only in the relocation purposes only, that we will use the property, the damaged property, as well as the relocation property. We usually take both properties as collateral because if you were to dispose of the other property, then we have to make sure that those proceeds go towards your SBA loan, because the whole purpose of the SBA program, especially for relocation, is to put you back in the position where you were pre-disaster. So in using the relocation, that is an extraordinary situation with your situation, but usually we do take both properties as collateral.
It just happened that we owed very, very little on our existing mortgage, and we're able to pay off, so it don't use SBA funds for rolling into the SBA fund.
Right, so that's that particular situation.
You mentioned that you take both properties as collateral. Does that mean that you add on the pre-existing mortgage onto the SBA loan? Or in the case of someone like, I got approved, I'm in the process of getting approved to relocate, but I still owe on my PJ house. If you guys don't add on that mortgage to the SBA loan, I'll be paying two mortgages. So if I get a buyout, do I still have to give you the money and still have to pay the mortgage for PJs?
So when we talk about a relocation, we actually can relocate and refinance your damaged property. So if you have a mortgage on that damaged property, unfortunately, you'll still be responsible for that mortgage on the damaged property. The relocation portion of your loan, as far as for SBA approval, that will be a new loan. Now, you may, try to talk with your case manager and see if there's something they can work out. But that, again, the whole purpose of the program, especially for relocation, is to put you back in a position where you were pre-disaster. So it's really not to be able to refinance and relocate, it's usually one or the other.
But if you don't do the refinance and still owe that mortgage, we can't use the buyout money to pay off that mortgage. We have to do that and still owe two mortgages.
Repeat that one more time. I'm trying. What's the question again?
You had said that if we get a buyout, we have to give SBA money. But if we owe two mortgages, we can't use the buyout money to pay off the PJ mortgage and just owe you guys?
If you receive a buyout for the PJ property, the damaged property, that would go towards paying off that mortgage on the PJ property.
Okay.
Yes.
And then any overage would go to SBA?
If you did choose the relocation loan, where we actually had the collateral on the damaged property and the relocation property, whatever residual would be applied toward the SBA.
Thank you. And I would suggest that particular issue of SBA and how the loan can transfer to a relocated property is one of the most complex issues that property owners run into. And usually the outcome is really based on the individual circumstances, so it's hard to give a general answer for everybody on a situation like that. I do appreciate the questions before, because I've heard them before, so. Okay, so this has to do with, I got two cards for the question of, if you start to do repairs on your property, what happens in terms of a future acquisition?
Well, there's maybe a lot that goes into this answer. Repairs of the property could result in you wanting to use post-flood or current market value as the market value that you're offered as opposed to pre-flood. If your property is completely fixed and it's in better shape than it was before, worth more than it was before, you can opt to use current market value instead. So that's one thing. If you have received insurance funds for the damage to the structure and subsequent repair of the structure and or FEMA individual assistance funding for a similar purpose, repairing the structure, and you've spent that funding on repairing the structure, The buyout would use the receipts and invoices, proofs of payment, documentation to show those funds were spent on their intended purpose, to not affect the buyout offer, the buyout bottom line, the proceeds to the seller. If those funds, if your structural insurance funds and or FEMA individual structural repair funds were not spent on repair of the structure, that amount can impact the amount that you're offered, the amount that you are compensated by.
So let me put it a different way. If you have a home that's damaged and you do some repairs to that particular home, and then later on an acquisition's offered, and you decide to participate in that program, you're not prohibited from participating just because you did some or all the repairs to the property. You may have a duplication of benefits issue, we call it DOB, sorry for the acronym, but you'll get the opportunity to document that it isn't a DOB, and usually the city and us work with homeowners in that process to make sure that you're not penalized too much. The only exception to that's going to be if you receive like insurance money and you don't spend it for repairs, then it's going to be used as a contribution towards the buyer.
Wow.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys a break, hopefully for a little bit here. So Corey, I don't know if you're here.
So the question is, why have so few of the recent recertification of housing assistance applications been approved? So I'm assuming that someone has applied for what we consider continued temporary housing assistance, which is continued rent. There's an application, I think about 8 pages. You've actually got to fill out that entire application. If you're missing something on that, then that would be the reason it was rejected. You've got to call the helpline or you visit the DRC. They can look at the application you submitted. One thing we do is, like I said earlier, we got to compare the pre-disaster income as well as expenses and the current situation. So you got to have a lease. So just because you say you spent the money you're spending on friends and family couch, you're spending that with them. In order for FEMA to provide you continued temporary housing assistance, you've got to establish a landlord-tenant relationship with that individual. So that's your landlord, for lack of a better term, you're renting off of them. So that's information that's got to be provided with that. You can't just fill out the form saying you're paying $500 for now you're paying $1,000. There's documentation that has to come with that. Each case is going to be a little bit different. So that's why I say either call the helpline or visit the DRC. They can look at the information you provided, see what maybe is missing, and help you review that application.
Okay, well, what about in the situation where all those conditions have been met? All the paperwork's been submitted, everything is there. And you said earlier, oh, well, if you were paying $500 and now you're paying $1,000, that you're going to get assistance, which is essentially what I've got going on. Now, those aren't figures, but my housing costs have more than doubled. All of my paperwork was proper and all of it was submitted, all of it was there. But they say I'm filthy rich and I can pay twice as much.
Well, the continued temporary housing assistance is not based upon your income, but I mean, I can't openly speak about your situation, but if you get with Terry or Matt afterwards, they look at your case. Have you met with them before and they look through it?
I understand, I'm with my other fellow survivors here, there are lots of us that are just flat. He's not out of hand. Like, oh, let's deny everybody, we'll just deal with the people that are appealing. That's kind of the attitude I'm getting. Not only that, the callers, and I'm not sure where they are, Maryland, I guess it is, are saying for not only the landlords, but for the contractors, that, oh, I've been trying to call your contractor. I've tried several times today. Same thing with my landlord. My landlord showed me a phone. There were no calls. they have not been trying to call our people, the contractors, same thing. They're not trying, they tell us they're trying to call, but they're not calling. So I'm just saying, someone needs to get a hold of people in Maryland and straighten them out a little bit.
We'll look into that, and
Thank you.
yeah, like I said, it's traditionally a thing we see with people, and usually they're told just fill out this paperwork, but there's cards that gotta go with that, so definitely I'll deal with carrying them afterwards, and we'll make sure we see what we can do.
Corey, can you clarify, did you say even if you are temporarily staying with a relative, you can establish that as a landlord tenant? Because we were told that never could happen where we could get temporary housing. So, can you clarify that?
So you've got to establish what's considered a landlord-tenant relationship with an individual, some form of a lease. Traditionally, FEMA looks at it, it has to be, it's supposed to be a separate housing unit with a separate entrance and exit. That's all part of it's supposed to weigh into it, but the big thing is you guys have that landlord-tenant
But
relationship.
you can with a relative if you're living on their property and they need all of this.
If you meet the conditions of FEMA, what is considered a housing unit. And if anybody wants to know what those are, you can Google Individual Assistance Program and Policy Guides, IAPPG. It outlines all of our programs, public knowledge. It explains in there what's considered a housing unit. All our programs are clearly outlined in there. So if you have any questions about that.
So Corey, I'm gonna point out that nobody blessed me yet tonight. So you're the only one.
Okay. So the question, is rental assistance still available after purchasing new home to replace the home that was lost due to flooding? So rental assistance for FEMA is just for that, for renting a property. So if you had a mortgage on a property, now you're renting somewhere, we could pay that continued temporary housing assistance. Thank you. So if you had a mortgage on a home, now you're renting somewhere, you still got that mortgage you're paying off, so you figure out what you want to do. That's just like if you're paying $500 before, now you're paying $1,000, but you have that mortgage, now you have this. All this is increased rental assistance. That's something that FEMA can't help with. Now, it can't go towards the mortgage, but if you're renting somewhere, it could.
So the question is FEMA going to make a living allowance for people who bought campers to live in besides?
No, but you can take the money you were provided by FEMA and use that to, if you purchase a unit. Now, if you're renting that camper, that is something that could be considered rent. So you can't do that. You can't establish that landlord-tenant relationship if you rent it off camping or whatever it is. There's potential for that. Or if you have a pad lease now, so you bought it, you can potentially seek reimbursement for the pad lease part of that only.
So you're saying if FEMA gave you money, use that money to put towards your camper?
If that will meet your housing need, then yes, you're completely allowed to do that. If you're choosing to not, because you don't know if you want to repair your home or something like that, you want to take that money and invest it in that because that can meet your housing need, that is completely acceptable.
Thank you.
What
about if you were like, say, going to like park paying $400 a month for the electrical and water stuff where your keeper is? Would that be considered part of the
Lot agreement or lot? That could be, I guess I said pad, but we talked about it first back, but yes, lot could go into that. Like utilities, all that's figured into that continued temporary housing assistance for.
So Corey, is there any program under the FEMA programs where FEMA can help with an existing mortgage if a house was destroyed?
So FEMA would provide that real property loss to the owners through that assessment, but what FEMA's not going to make you whole. It's not going to be dollar for dollar what it's going to cost to replace that. All of our things are line item percent every year. That's where our partners with SBA come in the whole community, long-term recovery group can help meet those unmet needs.
You're gonna have to speak up with the
So are you guys able to hear this with the noise?
kind of shout a little bit more. Yeah, she might have to use the hand.
It's okay. It's the rain, we can't hear it.
You want to repeat the question for you?
So the question was about the letters you get from FEMA and the websites they refer you to. The letter really would refer you from FEMA to disastersistance.gov. That's where you can create an online account with FEMA and see your current case. Yep, and then Iowa has one. Dennis, do you know that is Iowa floods 2019? You know off the top of your head?
I'm getting the shake of the head up and down, yes, so I have a question I can answer while Corey's coming back now. The question is, has there been a determination regarding Pacific Junction's floodplain / base flood elevation, the BFE? And if so, where can I find that info? So what I can tell you about that is that Pacific Junction had a FEMA regulatory map prior to the flood event. Been no change to the FEMA regulatory floodplain map due to the event that just happened. So, and while that particular map did recognize levee protection, and we know that those levees don't exist as they did before, the actual regulatory map has not changed. And it may take some time before that map would change if it does.
So kind of a follow-on question to earlier, is there a cap of available funds you can provide a homeowner? So there is, and now, based upon recent law last year, there's 2 caps. For an owner for repair assistance to real property, the cap is on this is actually $34,900. Now there was changes last year. This will be working through processing them.
Warning. Are we in a shelter? Are we in a shelter?
Yeah,
Time out,
does
tornado.
anybody know where the shelter is? Or are we in it?
Find out. Was that a tornado warning?
I'll finish in a second.
Say time out.
Yeah, hold on, Bruton.
No, this is a one. This is a one. 321, right? This is a one.
No, it's usually
I can tell
insured
you the
loss.
instant period is closed.
Yeah, tornado warning, Fremont County.
Yeah, they fired up.
The tornado warning I got was.
Okay, I'll get your attention for a second. We've got some very severe weather that is south of us. There's some tornado warnings down in Antarctica, south of Nebraska City right now. Right now, it looks like east and tip yourself, we're tracking in towards Shenandoah, Red Oak. We just have some real severe thunderstorms occurring outside. I recommend you do not go outside. I'm checking with the building facilitator here now where our best shelter location is. And we did have a tornado warning go off, but it's normally a regional thing here, and I haven't seen indications yet on the radar.
I got a tornado warning for Fremont. Yeah.
Okay, if we evacuate and we go to shelter, we're gonna go out this door, these doors over here, and we're gonna go to your left, and we're gonna go through a gymnasium to some locker room area, is what we're gonna do. It's still south, so we're looking at it right now, and I don't see anything.
So for now, Larry, we're staying here and continuing? Okay. Mr. Corey? Direct housing units question?
And sorry to finish the second part. So there's also a separate cap for other needs assistance to your personal property, transportation, disaster-related medical and dental needs. So direct housing units versus FEMA SBA loan to rebuild. So there's two caps currently. There's one for repair to your home, your real property damage is $34,009. There's also a separate cap for your other needs assistance, personal property, car, etc. And then rental assistance has no cap. It used to all be one cap, so that's a good change we have with the programs now. We're still working to implement that, but so there is additional assistance now.
Specifically on the inspection and came to whatever number they came to, is there a cap now relative to
So real property has a cap at $34,900 and personal property and other needs assistance has a cap at $34,900. They're two separate individual caps. They have the same amount.
Dennis, it's almost 8:30, so how much longer?
Correct.
So I think we're gonna try to make sure we answer the card questions that we have here. Going forward, I do have some for the county that I think go to the county engineers for answers in terms of rate, and that kind of thing, so I'm gonna send those.
County engineer.
Yeah.
County engineer, it's your turn.
Hi, I'm Corey Haas from the engineer's office. First question is, who will pick up the paint and other chemicals? We have a state contracted contractor, trade bus coming in. They'll be coming in at the earliest next week. They're going to follow behind what the DOT picked up and collect the hazardous waste material.
Will that be,
Yes, they'll pick it up from the properties. When is the 195th Street between Old 34 and West Street going to be water free so we can access our home by vehicle? I do not know.
Especially after this rain.
So, question, yeah, I think so, at least for you anyway, so you're off the hot seat. What volunteer organizations are helping homeowners clear out their homes?
Hello, volunteer organizations. We are seeing a decrease in volunteer organizations. Illinois Southern Baptist told us on Monday that they are going to be returning to Illinois because they have flooding there that they need to work with. So as of Thursday this week, they are going to be leaving. So if Illinois Southern Baptist has told you they are going to be doing your home, they are not going to be available after Thursday. Team Rubicon has stated they will be staying until June 1st. So they are hoping to meet all of their folks that they stated they would during that time. We still do have Christian Ministries, a very small group. We do still have a Mennonite group that comes in by the day occasionally, but right now we have no new volunteer organizations that are assessing or willing to be here. They're saying the dollars are being, their donations are being cut, their volunteers are running down, and they don't have staff available. We are trying to encourage AmeriCorps to extend their stay and come to Mills County and help us finish our muck out, because we know there are those of you who aren't going to be done. So please know we're still working on that. We will be working with the state to see what volunteer organizations we can continue to access.
So is that? I think I'm good. My battery's not dead yet. I was going through the cards trying to determine if we had any that hadn't already duplicated ones before, so it's a little bit tough. It's kind of like playing a board game, but I think the two that I have that I know are outstanding. The question is, have they, and I would assume they means either city or county government, identified who the state structural engineering inspector is? I think the answer to that question is that, at least in the case of Pacific Junction, they made a request for structural inspectors. I don't believe they're there yet. Yeah.
That's the one where we're waiting on right of entry in those forms.
Yeah, so as Joyce mentioned, once we have right of entry, where we know those folks can actually get on the ground and enter the structures, if they can, and do the assessments, then we will be, on behalf of the city of Pacific Junction, executing those. So those will happen, and those folks are identified. They're at the fire marshal's office. Maybe the last question that's not duplicative. So the question is, how much for flood insurance in the area? So, here's what I can say. There hasn't been any change to flood insurance caused by the event. So whatever the rate structure was for flood insurance policy at your structure before the event, you would have the same rate structure today. There could be future changes, so I'm not going to say that isn't going to change in the future. But for right now, there hasn't been any change to the FEMA flood insurance map, and that's really the map that determines the rate or coverages for insurance that are required. So with that, and the weather being the way it is, let me take one. I'll take one, and then yeah.
I never heard my question on my card asked. So my question is, at the beginning of the meeting, you asked how many people were interested in acquisitions. A very large amount of hands were up, an extremely large amount of hands. So you said it's up to the person in charge of the city to make that decision, to fill out that application. Is it just the mayor and city council together that make that decision? And with how many people here are interested, if they are not going to do that, can we go over that?
Yeah. So we haven't changed the ways that cities and counties go about their legal decision-making processes. So they'll have to execute them in that fashion. Usually that's in the form of a yeah, it's a council action, but there's a form that councils and boards usually execute, where there's the voting resolution. Thank you. Oh, yeah, it's getting late. So they'll do a resolution, and they'll typically vote on that resolution based on their guiding principles for that county or that city. That's what causes that action to take place, usually. Yeah, I don't know of any place where it's one of them. No, I've never seen that local government in Iowa, no, in that manner. So you have a city council, the city council votes based on
That's face to face with one particular person, I'm not going to say who, but that one particular person said that they are not starting by meetings. They have no interest in it whatsoever. That's why I'm asking, is it more than just one person to file this paperwork for you guys?
yeah, it is more than one person. Yeah. And it's, frankly, to be fair, it's always an issue in situations like this. They'll go through a process of talking with us and understanding the program and making a decision, so ultimately the decision gets made regarding the acquisition. And bear in mind, too, that not every acquisition that we talked about tonight is the same. There are different kinds with different programs, and that may change the perspective of a particular city or county. I understand that, too, so. But thus far, we've been invited in to talk with all the cities and counties in this area about all the programs that are available, and we're doing that. So, and we'll continue that effort. And whatever decisions those cities or counties make, that's their authority to make those decisions. So.
Can a homeowner request demolition without doing cost?
So, I don't want to take too many questions. I think let me do that this way. The reason a property is demolished, usually in these programs, is because it's required by a city or county in order to do that. So usually that's like normally it's under their nuisance ordinance. In Iowa, that varies from city to city how that looks, but it's usually a public health and safety risk or an imminent threat of collapse, that kind of thing, that causes the city to go through that process and to eventually demolish the structure. That's how it's done under this program too, so it doesn't change any part of that. So, in answer to your question, if you had a structure like that and you went to the city and said, I need help, my structure's gonna fall down, they apply their ordinance in the same manner, so. Well, that always ends up causing, that causes a problem later too, so eventually, abandoned structures become structures that are, become public health and safety issues, so it happens all the time, and, yeah, same ordinance usually. Yeah, I mean, it's true, I mean, it's a good discussion. The legal responsibility for the structure is the owner of the structure. That's where it starts. In recent cities and counties get involved a lot of times because either the owner can't take care of the issue, and so they come to public health and safety risk. But in essence, it's the same issue regardless, so. You guys have anything?
I just, one quick thing.
Well, hello. We had a lot of questions tonight. I really appreciate your patience. I know this is a long process. These are the questions that we were not able to get to. I will get you answers. I will post those on the website. If you all can access my number, if you need me to send you a hard copy, I'll do that. We will get answers to these. You saw me shuffling some cards over there. We tried to combine questions the best we could, so.
Okay, weather report, was a tornado warning issued for Hamburg. It kind of captured Sydney, just barely, screeched Shanda, MG, and Tabor. National Weather says the storm is heading east, northeast. We have heavy rain here right now. It's trying to clear the area, so we'll be closed today. I will ask you to be very careful. You're going to get wet if you go outside right now, so you may want to wait a few more minutes before you leave to let this severity of the rainfall lessen. But right now, National Weather Service says that we're under no direct threat for tornado activity.
Yeah. So I think we're going to conclude the meeting at this point. I appreciate everyone's attended this attention tonight. We do have the FEMA folks here that are still here to answer our individual assistance questions if needed. And I think that concludes our brief. Thank you.